And so now up as our last general session presentation for this NANOG, we have Mark Kosters from ARIN, who's going to give us an update on ARIN itself and the Whois-RWS service, which is a RESTful version of the Whois service.
So I'm Mark Kosters. I'm the CTO of ARIN, and I have along here Andy Newton, who's actually going to do the real technical part of this talk. But before I begin, I have a confession to make. And that confession is I'm kind of nervous up here today because it's the last session of the day. Everybody's ready to go home. And, you know, frankly, I am too. The other confession I have is Dwayne and I are wearing the same shirt. So who else noticed that? Oh, okay, all right. So I know that's a little bit vain. Uh-oh, what's up, Marty?
We actually did notice it, and it actually looks like the contrast makes you guys look like you have floating heads on the video feed, from what I understand.
So I'll just kind of move around like this for a while, see what happens. So, no, I actually at first I was thinking that, you know, this is pretty vain for me to even be worrying about this, and after a little bit, Betty actually came up and said, hey, I was going to wear that shirt too, but I changed after seeing what Dwayne did. I'm not going to change. I'm sorry. I'm going to stay up here as it is. So what I'd like to do on this last session of the day is I'd like to talk about what ARIN's is up to. So you guys are aware of what ARIN is doing, and encourage you guys to participate as well. We're going to end up with Andy talking about a replacement of Whois that we have coming out, which we're pretty excited about. So first I want to talk about ARIN's outreach efforts. So we have the perfect storm upcoming. Does anybody know what that perfect storm is? And it's not the snow in DC. Anyone have any ideas? So this stuff about V6, is that sort of get people kind of aware? Also autonomous system numbers. We're running out of 2-byte AS numbers. And actually the dates on these things are actually coming, they're eerily similar in terms of when the run out is. And the run out from that IANA will have for us is going to be end of next year. And so I know everybody is prepping for V6, but we also need to do the same with autonomous system numbers. And this is not only for this group, you guys are pretty savvy and everything else, but there's a lot of people within our community that really don't know this. And John Kern, our CEO, and a bunch of other people are going around to various other communities and telling them about this and saying, hey, look, you guys need to prepare yourself because it's coming and you don't want to be caught flat-footed. So along with that goes on giving education on the RIR system and how that works, as well as the policy development process that all y'all can be a part of. And if there's something that you think that really sucks at ARIN, you have the opportunity to fix it within the process. Here are the current policy proposal discussions, and they go from directory service changes in terms of privacy, dealing with customers, standardization of registration requirements, moving the minimum assignment unit down to a /24. At one point it was a /19, and that's gone down and down and down now. Simplifying the actual policies as they exist today because they have evolved over time. And this is really a testament to you guys in terms of actually setting these policies up. And I know for many of you, policies are kind of like really boring, blah, 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 blah. But these things are really the engine that helps drive your business and are important for you to actually understand if you can. I was told after the last meeting where there's a pretty heavy dosage of ARIN presentations going on that we shouldn't have used the word policy, maybe use the word candy instead. I'm not really sure if that works. It works with little kids, you know, when you want them to eat like their real food, you say, like meat and potatoes or whatever, you say, hey, it's candy, just go ahead and eat it, and they do, and everything's good. And I know you guys are way too smart for that, so I'll just keep on using the word policy for now. 4-byte AS numbers. We have a 1-year deferment on 4-byte ASs. you may recall there was this policy that was put forth that in 2010, the default was to give out 4-byte ASs. That is not, we're not doing that. We're actually giving out 2-byte upon request. So if you come in and ask for an AS number, you're going to get a 2-byte. And this is a result of multiple things. One is the community's just not ready for this yet. And this was brought up a year ago by Greg Hankins and et cetera, about the issues that are going on, that software's just not ready yet for your routers and et cetera. There's been a 4-byte AS wiki that's been set up that you guys could take a look at. And you really need to complain to your vendors, because this is something that's going to happen next year, that we're going to run out of 2-byte AS numbers, and we need to have 4-byte AS support. And if you don't have this now, you better have it soon, because we're going to have some issues dealing with that otherwise. In 2009, we received 197 requests for 4-byte ASs. Out of that number, 140 came back and said, oops, we can't do this because our upstreams don't support 4-byte ASs, and we really need to get that taken care of. So the number of 4-byte ASs that were issued in 2009 were 12. ARIN had 2 of them. And we actually peer with people on the East Coast and the West Coast with 4-byte ASs, and encourage any of you who want to peer with us to go ahead and do so. And we could talk about this afterwards if you like. The typical reason for exchange, as I mentioned before, is the upstream doesn't support 4-byte ASs. Now for the other part of the perfect storm, V4 runout or depletion. And you can see that you have these slides in terms of the central registry, which is a space that was given out before the RIR system was actually put in place. That we currently have 22/8s left to give out. That's going to happen probably by the end of next year, where that is going to be totally depleted. And when that happens, there's going to be some time where ARIN and other regional registries will have space to give out. But there's going to be a whole sea change that's going to happen after that event. So kind of ponder that for a while. And I know there's a lot of good things going on in V6, but the amount of deployment that's going on, just to give you an example, we see a fraction of 1% of our actual traffic being over V6. Yep.
Mike? Sound guy, wake up, please.
All right.
Thanks.
All right. I love having this kind of power. Given what you just said, is anybody doing anything from the registry side other than kind of like, perhaps like Jeff and those guys, regarding how post run out allocation of IPv4 space is going to work? Is that framed up enough to let you answer it, or you want me to go further?
That's kind of interesting. How the framework's going to happen? Well, there's.
I mean, what do the RIRs think is going to happen, and what have they done? I know what Jeff and George are doing and all that kind of stuff, but what are you guys doing?
So one of the things that's been put in place is a relaxed transfer policy, and there's going to be the opportunity for people to list network resources that they may have made available to others, and a list of people who have been properly vetted that have a need for that as address space. And this is something that's going to happen over the next year. So there's going to be an opportunity for people to get address space, but it won't be basically space that's been previously unallocated from other. It's going to have some history associated with it. So that's one particular venue. Another is that V6 is going to actually take off, and everybody will have their very sort of coexistence strategies put in place so that from an end user's perspective, it's totally transparent in terms of they're connecting to a v6 aware server or a v4 aware server, and they're able to make things work in some other fashion. So, and I know there's some good work that's finally awakened that's underway over the last 2 years, but it's to me, it's quite scary how little sort of transition has actually occurred to this point in time, given that we have this upcoming deadline. Mike?
Right. Right. So I guess my question was, I wanted to make it more pointed. All of that stuff, yeah.
Yep.
You know, all of that stuff, yeah, and yeah, more IPv6 and all that stuff.
Yep.
But what's going to happen is, and what is happening is, there's going to be a market out there for this stuff, right? It's a commodity that people are going to want to trade and stuff like that. And how, from the RIR perspective, is, you know, I mean, it's a new entity kind of thing, right?
Yep.
And you know, it has impact on the routing system. It has impact on all of this stuff, right? And I kind of look at this and I go, well, people are doing different things. There's new, you know, like you said, like the transfer policy and what, you know, all the stuff that's going on at APNIC and all of this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But none of it really contemplates the real world in some way, because the real world is, you know, you were saying, I think your terminology was something like verified need, right?
Yeah.
Verified need is going to be checkbook, right?
Correct.
And that's the different kind of verified need than what we've been talking about in the past, right?
Yep, that's true. Hey, John, I think John's going up and say something about this as well. Mike?
Some good questions. John Curran, CEO of ARIN. If you think about what happens when we get to the free pool depletion, it's a changed world, you're right. There's two things that registries do right now. We keep track of who has what block. That's a registry function. And there's an allocation function where we take the free pool and we allocate it. Well, there's no free pool, there's no allocation, but there's still the registry function going on. So all the RIRs are planning to continue to be registries and continue to handle that. The real question comes up of how do people find address space if there's no free pool? So that's our transfer listing service. I know other RIRs are working on things. But at the end of the day, there's only so much blood you're going to get from this stone, because we're allocating 10 to 12/8s per year. Even if you think that some of those are unused and there's legacy addresses that can be reclaimed, what are you going to get? 4, 5, 6, 7 equivalents of /8? You're not going to get 30. So at the end of the day, while we can do things to help get the v4 address space to where it's needed, that's only going to give us a few more years. And at some point, it's simply 4 billion addresses gets too tight to get the job done. So the RIRs are all working to make sure that someone who has address space need can get it. Once we get to an allocation pool that doesn't exist, need will be, yep, you say you need it and you want to get the address space, but you're going to have to find someone who has it and motivate them to transfer it. So that can't last forever. It can only give us a few more years unless the whole world goes to dynamic assignment for edges. And at the end of the day, all the RIRs can do is prepare to be better RIRs, better registries, that don't have an allocation function, since there won't be a free pool to allocate.
Hey guys, so can we let Mark finish his presentation? And then we'll get to all of this right at the end. I know we're at a perfect point, but let's let him finish his presentation and then we can take all the questions.
Actually, I thought I was going to have time to go upstairs and change my shirt. Okay, so one of the things I like to do is, if you guys are intrigued by this, please come to our meeting. So we have a meeting that's in Toronto in mid-April, and registration is open for that. And for you who don't have the funds to do that, there is a fellowship program that has been made available, and the deadline for that is February 26th. So what I'd like to talk now is about engineering activities. And so the rest of this stuff is stuff that you should least I'm really excited about. So we've gone to a agile development process, and we're doing monthly updates to the ARIN website, ARIN Online. And you will see incremental increases in the amount of new features that are made available. In fact, I had one person came up to me and said, "This is great. I finally can now know what resources I have within from ARIN." So this is wonderful. Now we have a couple other things that are going on that are big as well. One is DNSSEC. We hope at the end of the year, and we're going to have 3 big initiatives coming out. One is that you will be able to include your DS records for your reverse entries within our system, and we'll allow that. We'll have that finished in 2010. We're going to have a certificate-based system for you to actually link your autonomous system origin, your origin ASs with your network allocations. That's called RPKI. It's a pilot right now. I encourage you, if you have time, to go ahead and play with this, and we would love to have feedback from you guys on this, because this is a very, very important project for us as we go ahead. And finally, Whois-RWS, which Andy is going to talk about here shortly. Again, a pilot's now available for you to go ahead and play with, and we encourage you to do so. One of the things that we've seen is our Whois traffic increase. It's like exponential right now. And this typically is a wonderful thing to have, and we're able to keep up with the load, but we're starting to get worried about it. Because we're saying, why are we seeing all this traffic all of a sudden? And what's causing this? And one of the things that we've done is looking at the traffic. We found that 50% of it is self-referential. It's basically a guy coming in, or a person, coming in from a particular IP address, asking for that particular IP address. And they're singleton queries. So they just come in once and they leave. So this isn't like someone that's trying to set up some sort of geolocation service and trying to download a database over Whois. These are singleton queries for the most part. And it's most interesting. It doesn't appear to be a botnet. We've talked to various researchers out there and given them some traffic to look at. And they're not seeing any sort of correlation. So if any of you have seen something like this, as in terms of an application that people are downloading, most of it seems to be Windows-based boxes, please let us know, because we're interested in seeing what's going on and see if we can actually stop this, or at least minimize it and try to figure out if there's a better way of doing these things. So this actually led us to say, okay, what are we going to do with Whois? So the Whois Protocol has been deprecated by the IETF. This is a really creaky, stupid protocol. It's kind of like sending in a query and you get back a result. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, I want to send in an IP address. Well, is that really what you mean? Let me just see if that actually matches the autonomous system number, and I'll see if that matches. Or maybe that IP address actually matches a company name, which may or may not happen. So there's all sorts of weird, quirky behaviors that are in legacy Whois servers that give you back sort of unexpected results. And one of the things that we want to do is take a new look at this. We have been taking a new look at this. And so what Andy's going to talk about now is Whois-RWS, RESTful Web Service. And hopefully some of these things will become a little bit more clear to you, and you'll see this as a much better sort of service going forward. So Andy?
All right, thanks, Mark. So one of the questions you probably might want to ask is, what exactly is REST? It stands for Representational State Transfer. It's actually part of, I think, Roy Fielding's dissertation, and he's one of the guys who created HTTP. It isn't specific to HTTP, however, but when you apply it to HTTP, people tend to call these things RESTful Web Services. The concept really isn't all that hard. Essentially what it is you apply standard database-style CRUD operations to the different HTTP methods available. That's the first part of it. And the second part of it is you have these things called URLs which address resources. And it's pretty straightforward that way. This whole model of how you do programmatic interactions over the Internet with RESTful Web Services is very popular. You see it with Amazon's S3 service, and you see it with a lot of the Yahoo and Google services, where they allow developers to talk to their systems via a RESTful web service. So it's an industry buzzword, and one of the questions probably you might be asking is, why on earth is ARIN getting into this? And it isn't because it's an industry buzzword that we decided to go down this path. Actually, what started us down this path was we have a fairly big re-engineering effort going on in order to accommodate our later phases of DNSSEC and some of the lane checking that we're going to do. And in the process, Whois is going to have to get rewritten. So we started to take a look at the components we've already used for ARIN Online, and we decided that it was really easy using that software stack to create a RESTful web service. And then from there, we can hook on other things. So that's how we started down this path. And of course, when you start talking about redoing all these hooks into our data, you can actually come up with a system that's much more highly usable by end users. So how is it useful to Whois? Well, things like POCs, orgs, nets, all those things will have URLs. URLs you can cut and paste and send an email and all sorts of stuff, and people can click on. We all click on email URLs in email, right? Okay. And it also gives a very simple programmatic interface into that Whois data. Compared to the nickname port 43 protocol, you get a lot more discrete types of inputs and outputs that you're looking at. And of course, you get to reuse all the HTTP infrastructure. I don't want to actually do a job of selling REST to you, because there's a very good book out there from O'Reilly on RESTful web services. It's a very quick read. You can go get it, and it actually describes how a lot of these services, it'll walk you through the Amazon S3 interface and so forth. But it does a very good job of describing REST and just how simple it is. As Mark said, we do have a demo up. I think it's been up since October, and it's actually available natively over v6. So if you have v6, you can go there. It's also available on v4. So here's what we have. Essentially, we have the RESTful web service, which talks to a database on the Whois-RWS nodes. And that thing is synced with our registration database back at our offices. We're not getting rid of port 43. That's not the point here. But what our port 40, we have a port 43 proxy, which essentially just translates all those port 43 queries into RESTful web services and then talks to our service. We also have, and we have had for a long time, a regular web, a browsable web interface into our Whois data. We're carrying that forward as well, and that's doing the same trick. It's just going to turn around, take what you've put in there and translate it into something that you can actually get a RESTful, talk to the RESTful web service. And the outputs, you'll actually get URLs that you can cut and paste. Note down at the bottom it says we haven't written any clients. That's kind of one of the bonuses for RESTful web services. And the reason we haven't written any clients is because you already have them. A web browser is a RESTful client. There are a lot of command line clients as well, like wget, curl. And when you're outputting XML, there are even command line clients for dealing with the XML. And I'll run through some of those. Again, any modern web browser can do this. They'll also do what we call SSL Transforms. So when we hand you back XML, they can transform it into HTML or text or, well, anything you'd like. If you're using Firefox and you actually just want to see XML data structures, Firefox actually does a pretty good job of showing formatted XML. And of course, almost any browser can use the basic web form that we have. So what are the command lines? Command line clients, which I think is what a lot of people here would be interested in. Well, basically, if you and these are found on like Unix and Unix-like systems, or if you have something like Cygwin for Windows. Curl and wget, you can just put an HTTP URL in there, and you can get back the information you need. If you want to process it and do a little more information, a little more processing with the data you get back, you can use XML lint or xslt proc. Which can then, xslt proc is a nice little utility. It'll take an XML document that we can send you over an HTTP URL, and you can transform it into whatever you want. And we even provide some XSL style sheets for that. Again, we're still going to offer the nickname Whois port 43 interface. You can use that with any Whois client if you want, depending on how your Whois client works. It's to tell it to point it at a specific host, but right now you can point it at Whois-RWS-demo.arin.net. Keep in mind that's not RESTful, but the majority of people still use port 43. So here's an example of the RESTful call into our system. And what you see here is an example of using XML lint and just telling XML lint to format the XML output. And all I said was XML lint, format this, and here's the URL. And basically, points at our system, the demo site, /rest/poc/Koster-ARIN, which is Mark Kosters' POC handle. And boom, all of a sudden I have all his POC handle in XML format and the structured data that I can deal with. So again, that's one of the things we're doing here. We're providing all our resources as URLs. So you have POCs that are URLs. If you wanted an organization such as ARIN, you would say /org/ARIN. That's the URL for that, and so forth. It also, you can do relative URLs. You can say I want all the networks assigned to an organization, so you'd say /org/org handle /nets, and you have their networks. We support all the same searching that you would see under port 43, such as if you wanted to know all the orgs with a certain name, you would say orgs, ;name equals ARIN, and it'll do that. It'll support wildcards. Unlike port 43, you can actually match terms, mix and match terms. So you see the last example down there. I'm looking for someone, POC, whose first name is Mark and last name is Kosters. IP addresses. Again, as Mark said, 91% of all our queries are for IP addresses, and I believe it's actually above that now. To do that, you would just say /IP/IP address, and boom, you've got it. We support CIDR queries over this interface, and initially we weren't going to support the CIDR queries over port 43, but we've actually decided that we will, and that code's actually running. So port 43 now supports CIDR queries as well. And you can do things, again, with IP addresses and CIDR queries, such as relative URLs, such as I want a network more specific for this CIDR query or for this IP address. Our primary focus and output is XML. However, we do have JSON outputs if you're doing some sort of JavaScript or AJAX-style application, and we do know that people are using this because looking at the logs, we can tell there's at least one person who has written an application against the service already. We also put text and HTML out there, and we provide style sheets. So you can run the XML through a style sheet and transform this data into anything you need. If you want it in comma-separated values or tab-separated values, you could use a style sheet for that. And again, we provide some as a starting place for everybody. And so here's an example of doing that. Using xslt proc, which is, again, another command line tool. You probably have it on your systems. Basically, all I've done is I've handed it a template, and I've handed it the URL for Mark Kosters' POC, and it printed it out in text form this time. The other things we can do, and we can because we're using the HTTP infrastructure, is there are things we can't do with Whois, such as take advantage of all those HTTP caches that are out there. Say, for instance, that you have some sort of analysis tool that's querying our Whois servers for information, or you have multiple of these things out there. There's no need for you to ask us the question multiple times if you set up your own local proxy, local caching proxy. You could actually have your different analyzers ask the caching proxy for the information, and you'll get it back much faster. And we are using caching on our side to help alleviate load as well. And that's something that you can do. You don't have to do. It's up to you. But it's possible because we're using all that web infrastructure. We haven't done this today, but it's possible. We could always put in referrals to individual organizations. So when someone looks at an organization, they want to know who they are, they get our information on it, and if that organization provided us our URL, we could actually spit that out in the output as well, saying, by the way, if you want to know more information about this organization or this particular network that they have, here you can go chase down the URL. And you don't have to do that for orgs. You can put it on any type of resource. And another thing is we can, because HTTP has built-in authentication mechanisms, we can start thinking about policies that allow authentication and different types of authorization for information. Today with Whois, you can't really do that. It's an all-or-nothing type protocol. And when we also can support versioning. One of the problems with Whois is that when someone queries us, if they're trying to machine parse that information, if we change the output, which we do from time to time, sometimes it breaks their parsers. That can be kind of a headache for a lot of people. Well, with HTTP, what you can do is we can have accept headers for saying, I want this version of your data, or I want that version of your data. It's not a silver bullet, but it's one of those things in the toolbox that we can use to help mitigate changes in our service. We have the RESTful service documented in the PDF file. You can go get that off of our web server here. And then we have a mailing list for people to ask questions on as well. And you can subscribe to that. It's open to anybody. And then one of the last things we're doing is, in addition to upgrading or enhancing the actual interface, we also took a look at how often we can change the frequency updates to the service itself. Today, it's the service is only updated every 24 hours. But what we have looked at the infrastructure for actually replicating data, and because we're using a lot of those ARIN Online components, we can now ship data out to the nodes much more frequently. At the moment, we're looking at every 10 minutes. We might be able to get that down to even a smaller amount of time, depending on the load we anticipate. So, are there any questions? You can now ask Mark all the IPv6 policy questions too, I guess. But if you have any questions about the Whois RESTful service, we also have the website and the mailing list. Aaron?
Hi there. First, great job. This looks nice. This is a good step. Wanted to know if the XML schema that you've got as 1.0 is the intended standard and shouldn't change at this point, or at least supports the versioning that you mentioned?
Right now, we only have. I would not say the 1.0. What we're saying is 1.0 is final, though it won't change a whole lot. There is no. I mean, this is not really a standard as far as like a standards body would do.
Sorry,
but we will lock it down if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Is when can we make code modifications to start playing with this and expect that version won't change?
When we go into production. When we go into production is when we plan on locking it down. And the reason for that is we're still tinkering with some of the back-end processes, and we have to anticipate our upcoming delegation model. And we still have a couple of I's to dot and T's to cross. I wish I could tell you it was today, but it's not.
Okay, awesome. And then lastly, my general ARIN plea. First, I'd kind of like to ask that instead of doing this Wednesday afternoon as half the people in the room are gone and tired or hungover, et cetera, we have the ARIN update on Monday or Tuesday. And obviously that takes a program committee change. But if you're looking to get operator involvement in the ARIN community, this is the way wrong time for it. We keep asking people to come to meetings when there's less than a third of the attendees in the room, which doesn't probably get the point across. And looking around at the people I see at the mics, it's usually the people that are at ARIN meetings up here talking. Also, on the comment about getting people to come to ARIN meetings, while sometimes it's hard to get people to come to an ARIN-only meeting, it's not that hard to extend the 2 days in October where we have the joint meeting. So perhaps we should focus on getting people to add 2 days to their stay rather than go to a new one. Thank you guys for your effort.
Aaron, point taken. Thanks for the input, okay?
I guess, Rob?
I'd like to add something on to what JC said earlier. I'm sure that every single person in this room has been at a party, been at a meeting, been at some sort of discussion where the depletion comes up, and somebody who I'll refer to the class of people as the /dot crowd or the enterprise IT folks starts talking about, well, all we need to do to fix this problem is start reclaiming the space that isn't being used, and the problem just goes away. And I think that all of us need to make sure that whenever we hear somebody saying that, we need to somehow slide the figure 23 days into the discussion. And 23 days represents the approximate amount of time that you buy until IPv4 run out by reclaiming 1/8. It just doesn't work.
Kevin Overend from ESNet. This is also really on Mark's talk, since I was up here before, and now on IPv6. I am growing increasingly disturbed at the number of vendors, and for that matter network administrators as well, who are unaware of the 4-byte ASN issues. We recently went out and talked to all the leading vendors of traffic analysis systems, Arbor Packet Design, and a whole raft of others. And do you know how many of them are ready for 4-byte ASNs today? Got a big goose egg here. Everyone says, we got responses from varying. Most of them were, it's on our roadmap. We'll have it in a version next year sometime, next year. Or 4-byte ASNs, that's a really scary one. And no, we didn't get that from any of the big boys, but still, there were several people who did have that response, and I think this one might end up biting us sooner than running out of IPv4 space and cause a tremendous amount of chaos if people don't start really pounding on the need for attention on 4-byte ASNs.
You want to speak to me? All right. Let's go to the back of the microphone.
My name is Rich Brown. My company's Darkware. I had a question on the RESTful Web service. If we were to offer caching for the service, what's a good cache timeout? I saw currently you're updating the data every 24 hours, so I know what I would set my cache timer to. But if you're going to start updating it more reliably, do you have advice for how often people should, or how long people should cache that?
I would say that depends on your needs. We do at present are not planning on putting any cache control headers in the responses, so we would not be playing with your caches. However, that doesn't stop you from doing stuff. So if you think that a 5-minute timeout or something like 5-minute default expiration is good, then that's probably good. It really depends on your needs. I wouldn't. Personally, I don't see the cases for going above maybe 10 minutes, but it really depends.
Okay, thank you.
Just to add to that a little bit, the frequency updates isn't all that high as well. So it's not like you have to worry about something changing in the next 5 minutes on a frequent basis, because it probably won't change that much.
Yeah, it's really to help you, not us.
Thank you.
Yes, Ed.
Ed Lewis, New Star. I have a question about the referral in the RESTful presentation. Are you going to refer us to resources registered in other RARs through that? Okay,
so first of all, we haven't implemented that yet, because what that would require is for us to go into our provisioning systems and add that field or whatever to the database. That's why this slide says the future is the future enabled. It could be to anything, really. I don't see why we would vet the URL. Maybe we would have a policy. I don't know. So that depends on a couple of things. That depends on us first implementing the feature, and second, it depends on someone instituting an ARIN or getting ARIN to institute a policy on this.
What about the other RARs? Are they doing something similar to this? Would you be able to land something there?
I've been told in private about things, but I don't want to speak for other RARs.
I would say that would be very useful, though, to have that.
So just to kind of add on to this, they're looking at us right now and saying, God, this looks pretty intriguing. This is something that we may want to do as well. Let us know, ARIN, how you proceed along this and how well it does work.
And Picora. Before claiming this to be production grade, you need to standardize it at ICANN level to cover all the IRRs and all the TLD Whois services. This is very, very useful service. This is absolutely needed. but the present day chaos of have every Whois space to have their own format, own format on things, is terrible with regards to automation on security services. This is very much needed, but please coordinate this with other RIRs, perhaps at the global level.
Yeah. Just to answer to that, we're also involved working with ICANN and exposing this to them. And there's a working group that's looking at this within ICANN. It's dealing with internationalized names, but it serves the same sort of purpose, of which they're looking at right now in terms of what is minimum sort of requirements for a registrant, for example, and mainly looking at the TLD sort of side. But this also goes to the stuff that we're doing as well. So there is exposure there. The good news is that there's backward compatibility, so that you still have Whois as it is today. And we're working towards the framework that Andy's brought up here, which is actually quite excellent, on doing some more sort of regularized sort of ways of getting this information. Because right now it's wildly inconsistent doing queries across the board, no matter which registry you go to, on getting responses back.
So a question from David Conrad. He asks, why didn't ARIN use CRISP or IRIS, and are you guys intending to take RESTful Whois into the IETF? And if there's one answer to that, that's okay.
So I am very familiar with CRISP work and the IRIS protocol. My name is on most of those RFCs, actually. And a couple of, I think 2 years ago or a year and a half ago or something like that, internally we were talking about CRISP and IRIS. If you look at how much deployment that has, though, it's not very wide. In fact, I think the largest deployment is from DENIC, and that's not even for the entire suite of the IRIS protocol. It's mostly for the DCheck thing, which is domain name checking. We could have started this off with, let's go to the IETF again and try to standardize this. But our needs are a little more immediate in that we had to have a replacement service for the port 43 side to accommodate our delegation model changes. Our needs are a little more immediate than what the IETF could probably deliver from a standard. Now, that's not going to prevent us from going to the other RIRs or going to the IETF and try to come up with a standard format. So we could do that in the future. It's not off the table, but it's not where we wanted to start.
So I think we actually get a cut here because we're running a little tight on time, so that way people can wrap up. But I'm sure the ARIN folks will be available for other questions. Apologies for cutting your question off. And let's give ARIN a round of thanks for their presentation.